That's good.
You vegetarian?
No.
Me either.
But I feel like I eat way less meat than I ever have in my life. It's like I only eat it when I go out to eat, pretty much. I don't really buy it anymore.
That's sort of our deal. Is because she's vegetarian, it just doesn't make efficiency sense for us to cook meat in the van. Because we gotta, we can eat the same thing if we just make one meal.
Well, and it's just like, it's too hard to clean it. Like, clean up with meat is so much harder.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like, we have fridges and stuff, but it's just not, doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this might be rationalization, it might be, like, a good scientific guess, but, like, our sort of feeling is, like, if there wasn't, like, milk or raw eggs on it, we can kind of wipe it out and wash it in a couple days.
100%, right? Though, for sure.
But it would be different if you were eating, like, a bunch of meat and shit.
Yeah.
It'd make you sick. I got barbecue sauce in my pants.
All right. Oh, I got slobber on my crotch, so it's fine.
We're doing good.
All right, let's podcast.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 37 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van, where I have conversations with people who have relationships with residential vehicles. I'm your host, Marty Benson, and today's episode features Alexa Glazer. Alexa is a full-time van lifer. She lives in a Mercedes Sprinter. She's also a public speaker and author. She came into Encinitas to do a speaking engagement promoting her new book, Livin the Dream, and we got a chance to hang out with her afterwards. One of the cool things about living in Encinitas in the winter is that our weather is less crappy than everywhere else in the country. So all my van friends show up. We got tons of van homies in town right now, which is awesome. I'm podcast rich, so look forward to this and other episodes in the coming weeks to see who came to visit. It's a really good crew of people, and it was wonderful to sit down and talk to Alexa about her process, writing, living in the van, and the whatnot. So I hope that you enjoy episode 37 of From the Van featuring Alexa Glazer.
All right, Alexa Glazer.
Yep.
You're from Ohio.
Yep, Cleveland,
what town?
Ohio.
Cleveland?
Yeah.
I've never been to Cleveland.
We drove through Cleveland.
Did we? I don't remember.
We stopped in Columbus for
Yeah.
a night. Well, the only thing we did was go to the Brewdog Hotel, and that was all that we saw of Columbus.
Yeah. Yeah,
did
we were
well.
there for like 12 hours just drinking beer. You just came out with a book.
I did.
What's it called?
Living the Dream today because tomorrow is not promised.
Yeah?
It's my first baby. So
Yeah?
my first, my van is the second.
Okay.
We'll see what comes next.
Nice. How long have you been in the van?
Just about 5 months full time.
Oh, okay.
So I've had it for about a year. Did like part time for a while I finished teaching last year, and then now we're just following the Oliver Road.
Nice. Where were you teaching?
Clark County School District, so in Nevada, like Vegas area.
Okay.
I was a substitute, but I took a long-term position, so I actually had my kiddos for like longer than their teacher, and it was insane. Such a learning experience.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll bet so.
What did you teach?
Mostly kindergarten and preschool.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, it takes a different type of person, but so does high school, so does middle school, and I wouldn't want to do those. So I like the little guys.
Little kids. I feel like, I don't even know, man. I'm not around kids very much. And like, I would imagine that like super young kids have like a completely different set of, they're probably not as defiant and stuff, but they've got their own like physiological shit going on too.
Oh yeah, it's insane. But they're like, the way they think is so simple, and like we guys adults have to get back to that, I think. You know what I mean? Like they show love so differently. Like literally one day I decided to start tallying how many hugs I got, and it was like upwards of 60. Like
that's great.
insane amounts of hugs. But they like love that, and like they're so honest because they're like told so much like not to lie, and so even if you like they want to, you can immediately tell. So that's amazing. They're so bold, they're fearless.
Yeah.
They got like the biggest dreams ever.
Yeah, there's a big lesson to take from that, I guess. Does that come through in your book? What was the process?
So I started writing as a coping mechanism.
Okay.
When I lost my dad almost 6 years ago, my mentor, who is like dad number 2 now, he was like, just start writing, whether it's a sentence, a paragraph, pages long, just write to get your thoughts down, because it's physical proof of where you were, where you're going. And it's something to look back on, to like have kind of these new memories and make yourself feel a little bit more human when you don't. And so after about a year of just kind of doing that, I really fell in love with it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down and write something with intention. And I wrote what is now one of my first chapters. And literally from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to try and change the world and give people some hope, or make them feel less alone, give them a friend they didn't have, whatever it may be. But the entire process probably took about 3 years.
Okay.
And then towards the end, I was like, I want this in my hands before I turned 25. And so from like August to December of like that year, I knocked out everything, and then made that goal of before 25.
Nice.
Having a book. So yeah.
Oh, you make me feel really old. But what doesn't? That's great. Did you self-publish it?
I self-published, yes.
Okay.
So definitely want to write another one and try going the other route. But I have to say, like, the first book was more so just like for me and kind of family and friends. So kind of the basis was like I wanted to learn from my dad without him being here. And so what I did is I sent a letter to about 400 people, everyone that signed the guest book at the wake, and handwritten envelopes and everything. And I asked them to send me like rules, values, morals of my dad, stories that they had together, so that I can continue learning. So throughout my book, I have like Phil Glazer rules, and basically it's these like little one-liners he had, like strap on a pair, chase your dreams, not your kettle, which is a tattoo of mine. Or it's like all about relationships, stuff about family, whatever. And I kind of interpret what he said by that, and then have like testimonials per se underneath of like what everyone else sent me. So for me, publishing it, like we had a big book release party. I had one in Vegas because that's where I lived at the time, and then one back home in Cleveland. And the one in Cleveland, we had like 350 people there, and it was this amazing kind of just like celebration. Like sure, the book brought everyone together, but like I said, it was more so just to celebrate him.
Yeah.
And like have a time with everyone together where we're not crying. Like sure, there was tears shed, but we were crying about like the good stuff and all those like amazing memories, that we're all still okay. Because the first time everyone was together, you don't think you're okay. You don't think you ever will be. So that was more so. Book 1 was for me. Book 2 maybe for the rest of the world, and try to publish it a different way.
Right. Cool. And you've been traveling around sort of promoting it, but also speaking like sort of outside of the book too.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So speaking for me is kind of like at this moment, because I think everything shifts so often, right? But speaking for me is like end all be all. Like I want that to be my life and like the driving force of the van and like where I'm going essentially. But basically like the umbrella of what I talk on is the book and Livin the Dream. However, I don't speak to one specific group, and that's something I love. Like so many people are like, hey, who's your demographic? What's your niche?
Right.
And like my demographic is humans, my niche is connection, the umbrella of that is Livin the Dream. For me, speaking to different crowds, it opens up the door for engagement. I hate speaking at people, I want to speak with people. And that's something I always say like up front in the beginning, like please talk to me. Like I want you to have courage to stand up, tell me something, tell me anything. So I do a lot with like student leadership. When I'm like with them, I talk a lot about like being more courageous, not thinking about what you want to be when you grow up, but what you want to do. If it's like an all women's event, I talk more on like self-love and not necessarily women empowering women, but it's your job just as a human to go empower other humans. So take what you get from these women relationships and like go do that with every type of human out in the world. When I talk like Greek life and college students, I talk a lot about like crushing stereotypes and not checking society's boxes. So I always just tailor it to who I'm speaking to. But like I said, that Livin the Dream message is always like the backbone, and that's like the driving force. But that's what's amazing, and just getting to connect with people. Like that's why I moved into my van.
Yeah. But the van probably really facilitates a lot of speaking engagements and stuff. You can take stuff that you might not be able to take otherwise, because you don't have to pay for lodging and that sort of thing.
100%.
Yeah.
So now I'm like on my invoices though, I need to start putting like I need a parking spot, because some of these places I'm in the middle of nowhere, or there's not places to park. So that's been interesting. However, yeah, like that's 100% what it facilitates, being able to go anywhere and everywhere, and being able to do it for cheaper than if they were to hire someone else. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, this is probably, I'm obligated to ask this question and we'll probably spend the next 45 minutes answering it. But what is living the dream?
Yeah. Okay, so for me, it's chasing curiosity. Because I think living the dream is different for every single person. So this is just like my personal definition today. Tomorrow it could be different. Yesterday it was probably different. But for me, living the dream is chasing curiosity, storytelling, and making yourself a bit uncomfortable. I think the stage of life I'm in, or season I'm in right now, is just like all about me in a very unselfish but maybe a little bit selfish way. It's just like so much personal growth. So for me, just challenging myself and like going against the grain a bit, and seeing like these light bulb moments is like what I always talk about, is being able to connect with people and see like that light bulb over their head go off, and it's not necessarily that they know what that means, or I don't know what they're thinking or what they're feeling in that moment, but seeing impact is for me what the dream is, and connecting with people wholeheartedly. I always say I want people to feel like somebody when they feel like a nobody, and I really make that like my daily mission, whether it's just like smiling at people and like making people feel noticed, because I think a lot of times we don't, and we're so hard on ourselves. So when you being a complete stranger can make someone feel something, to me, like that's the dream. But overall, I think either we think living the dream is like this end all be all. We think it's like people saying like they're living the dream sarcastically, because I've gotten that a lot. Or
I'm guilty of using that.
Right? No, and totally, and I am too. I think we all are. But now I just have this whole thing. Like, I think a lot of times too, like even when I said it sarcastically, like that's when I needed to feel it the most.
Right.
Because to me, it's your rock bottom moments that make you realize that you actually are living the dream.
Right.
Because your rock bottom moments, typically the moments like you feel like you're not able to survive the next day, like you don't know what's to come, you wish something didn't happen, but that's where you grow the most. That's to me like where you live in the gap, I always say. And like living in the gap is like acknowledging moments before they become memories, and like living more intentionally. And I think you do that when you're at rock bottom.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when we're at like cloud 9, it's great, but we're not like doing much like self-reflection there, because we're just like going off this high, which isn't a bad thing, but I think the dream is at the bottom sometimes.
Yeah, something that I've talked about with some other people on this podcast that I'm super curious about is that I do think that there's this through line for people who live in vans, that this willful discomfort, getting out of our comfort zone, is sort of like something that we're into. Colette and I both like are, I think, like you, in that we love talking to strangers.
Oh yeah.
But in addition to that, like the limitations of the van, I feel like make you more malleable and impervious to like internalizing adversity. Yeah. You know, why did the van happen to you? What's your van genesis story?
Yeah. So I was in a relationship about 2.5 years ago. So first off, when I was 14, I got in an 8-year relationship.
Whoa.
Yeah, like that. It was crazy. Like looking back, but like that guy, I chased him a little bit at the end. Shouldn't have, but I think we got to do that once in our lives to realize that we shouldn't. So right after that,
I did enough for a few of us.
Seriously.
I think it's necessary though, for real. But so I had that 8-year relationship, and then I pretty much jumped into my next, which was almost 3 years. And so my entire adult life and some of my like teenage years, from 14 to like 22-ish, I was in a relationship. So when that other guy broke up with me, I finally learned to have life for me. And I'm such a giver, and I'm like, everyone take a piece of my heart, and I'm a people pleaser, which isn't always a good thing, but that's just like the way I am. So I needed this like much like relationship with me. And I started traveling a lot, and it was when I went to the Grand Tetons. I was taking my roommate, she was going to work there over the summer, so I drove with her and then flew back. But I remember looking at those mountains and being like, oh my God, there's so much more to the world than Disney World and Virginia Beach. Because growing up, like we went on vacation, don't get me wrong, but it was like, where are our dance competitions and softball tournaments at? Like that's where we vacation. And so I had just never seen these freaking mountains that make you feel like you're on a completely different universe. And so from then I went to Iceland, and right when I got back from Iceland, I spoke at one of my first student leadership conferences. And it was the last day I was speaking with another speaker. He was kind of giving me advice and stuff. We had talked for probably 30 minutes, and he gave me some good ideas, thoughts, things to think on. And I went up to him at the end of the day to say thank you, and he was like, oh no, we're not done. Here's a pin drop to Starbucks, I'll meet you there in 10. And I was like, okay. For me, someone knowing how valuable time is, especially when you're already doing the dang thing, I was just okay, this guy's giving me time, what the heck. And we went there, and eventually probably 2 hours into the conversation, I was like, I'd love to live in a van one day or get an Airstream. I want to see more, and I want to chase this curiosity and sunsets. And he called me out on my shit then. He was like, so you talk about living the dream, you tell people how to live the dream, and you're not living yours. He's like, what's holding you back? And I was like, nothing. I had no excuse at that point. And he was like, hey, do you have debt? I was like, no, I actually have a pretty good savings account, which not anymore. Now I'm definitely in debt from the van. However, I'm so much happier, right? And so after that conversation, 3 months later, I bought the van. It took 6 months to build it out, and now here we are living in it. And so for me, it was always just to facilitate more speaking and keep working on that relationship with me. And it's funny, I keep having these full circle moments where I'm I was super in love with my ex, and we're on good terms, but in my head I'm thank you for breaking my heart a little bit.
Right.
And the first guy, thank you for making me not chase the second one. It's just taking a piece from all those things.
Yeah, on that rock bottom thing that you were talking about, and I tell Colette this all the time, but I think I'm done probably running around looking for girls and stuff, and I couldn't handle being with her if I hadn't just had my heart just blasted to pieces a few times,
100%. I'm you forget that heartbreak actually hurts until you're going through it. And I always try to remind myself of that, where it's it could be worse. 'Cause it's a physical, emotional, mental just craziness when you go through these things. But like I said, you got to feel that. And be okay with feeling it. For a little bit.
And the other thing, it's you're in debt for your van now, but in those moments you feel so fucking alone because you got your ass kicked by this breakup or whatever. But everybody's in debt, and everybody gets their heart broken, you know. And so it's it's just some human shit that you got to go through, right? What do you think about that, bud? Got anything to add?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Well, let's talk about your van. What kind of van do you have?
Yeah, I have a 2014 high roof Mercedes Sprinter, 144. Her name is Billy.
Okay.
I love her, but she is. It's funny because people are oh, so she's a she, and I'm she's definitely a she. She's temperamental, always hungry, and you never know what's wrong. In the beginning, she was, like I said, everything that could have went wrong in the beginning. So now we're finally at a point where we're feeling a little bit better, and we have some weight off our shoulders, but she was a work in progress there for a while. Yeah.
What are your what's your setup in there?
So as far as all the stuff, all the things.
Yeah, amenities. You got a bed.
Yes.
Couch.
I have a bed, which is kind of awesome because I'm a little nugget, so I can fit horizontally in my van.
Okay.
And when I'm alone, which is, I would say 99% of the time that I'm by myself, I just sleep horizontally. However, it pulls out. When it pulls out, I have an extra mattress. It's 4 inches short of a king. It's extremely spacious. So one of my friends is with me right now, so we're pulling out the bed for that, that kind of stuff. It's awesome when you want to open the back doors and everything. But there's that. I have my lagoon table with seating across from one another, which I love. I love having people over.
Okay.
I've gotten really good at Moscow mules. I should have made you guys some over here.
Hey.
Talk dirty to me.
Right? That's kind of been my thing. And rice cakes. I love sharing those kind of things. When I went home to Ohio, I got some Ohio beer. I think my mom, she hates that I'm in the van, 100%. However, she's hey, here's a bottle of Kettle, here's some Bloody Mary mix, here's some Ohio beer, share with your friends, because then she knows that I'm not by myself.
Uh-huh.
Or you just scored a lot of booze for yourself.
It's so great. So yeah, and then I have my fridge. I wish I would have done like a Dometic, but you live and you learn. So eventually we'll get something more efficient. But right now I have like one of the dorm fridges. We got 300 watts on top, some deep cycle batteries in the back. No shower.
Yeah.
Planet Fitness, way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 24 and Planet Fitness just because 24 is right here. But we got Planet Fitness when we did this trip, and I like it so much better.
Yeah.
Our 24
so
here is a shithole, man.
Planet Fitness is like consistent. 24 hour, it's like some of them feel like you're at a luxury spa gym and you're like, yes, this is amazing. But most of them are really gross.
Really? I honestly don't think I've ever been in one.
Yeah, you're lucky. The one here is like doable, but
it's not the worst, but it's a dump.
Some of them we've been to, it's like you feel like you're in a prison. It's so gross. But the Planet Fitnesses were like always nice.
Right.
Like always clean.
It's funny though, I realized one thing that I took for granted that I kind of miss a little bit. I went home and I showered at my cousin's place and she was like, hey, do you want a robe? And I was like, yes. And I like wore that robe for the rest of the day, like slept in it. Because I was so used to it at home, like, okay, you get in the shower, you put on a towel, you start making breakfast, you walk around, like, here, we're like showering and then have to get dressed when we're still almost wet. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's the stuff you take for granted.
Try putting jeans on when you're wet.
I
That's
know.
his favorite thing to do.
Or leggings, like a new pair of leggings.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're screwed.
You're like, nope.
That's one of the reasons that the van was shut down when we first got here, is because even when it's cold out, my strategy at this point is like, I go in there in a pair of shorts. I come out in a pair of shorts with no underwear on so that I can like quasi air dry, and then when I get wherever I'm going, I actually get,
oh my God, that's
get
amazing.
in the back of the van and get dressed, right?
Heck yeah, van hacks. I need to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Speaking of van hacks, you got any tricks you figured out? No, I don't have any more. Give it all to him.
That's a good question.
Where do you piss?
I have a toilet.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Like a Nature's Head or something?
No, just like, I don't remember the brand, but basically a little gallon thing.
Yeah.
Couple gallon thing.
Okay.
But, so yeah, I have that at least. Geez though. I use it as least as, I don't like using it.
Yeah.
I'd rather squat outside. Honestly, for the longest time, for probably like the first month, I didn't even use it. I was like afraid to, because I'm like, I know I have to dump this thing.
Yeah.
So I would just squat everywhere.
Yeah.
But we're getting better. Van hacks though, I can't think of one off the top of my head yet.
Okay. Well, there's no pressure. That's what the internet's for. It's
Right.
already all out there.
Totally.
One of the things that I really like to talk about on this podcast, because I feel like there's such the van life trend and hashtag and all of that is being so glamorized, and it's cool. I mean, it affords us opportunities that we certainly, we'd have to work way more to make a shit ton of money to be able to do the sort of vacations that we do, and so all of that is real and awesome. But you mentioned that your mom doesn't like that you're in the van. What's your take on the sort of like societal stigma and your loved ones, your friends and family, like what were their responses to the thing?
So to be honest, I wasn't gonna tell my mom until after I bought the van, and then I needed a co-signer. So I was like, shoot, I have to tell her. But at first I really didn't tell anyone because I was just kind of nervous to hear how they were gonna respond. My mom definitely wasn't happy, and still isn't. But she very much understands why I'm doing this,
right?
And how I've revolved everything around like this, living the dream and trying to make an impact. And she loves that, supports it, knows it, sees it, feels it, all of that kind of stuff. But being my mom, she's scared of all these bad things that are going to happen, and too many people watch the news, and so they think everything bad that does happen is going to.
Right.
So there's all of that, and I think you get the glamorized portion of living in the van, and then you get also the people who are like, oh, you live in a van.
Yeah,
like, you need some money.
Right.
I'm like, no, this is a choice. So I think you get like both ends, and my mom, I think, thinks more of like people looking down, or she she's very much on thinking, like, I don't want life to be harder for you because people suck, in a sense. But it's funny, like, she has my location for, like, at all times.
Oh, on the phone, yeah.
Yeah, which actually just got a new phone the other day, so I should check to make sure she still does, or
Yeah.
she'll be freaking out. But the other day, she was like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like, every single night before I go to bed, I'm like, okay, where's Alexa sleeping? And there was one day that I was the van down by the river, and I literally was, like, sleeping right next to it. I was in Iowa. And she goes, when I looked to see where your location was, the pin drop was, like, in the middle of the river because it was, like, so far away. And she was like, oh my God, like, freaking out.
Oh,
So
no.
I was like, Mom, it's okay though. But so yeah, she doesn't like that. Most of my family doesn't totally love this. My sister's super supportive and everything, but even when I went home the first time in the van, I was super nervous because sometimes I feel like it's a lot of fake support, and sometimes I would rather, like, just don't say anything, you know, if you don't, it's whatever. But I was sleeping in my van, like, in my mom's driveway. And that was, like, really hard for people to accept. I'm like, this is my bed, this is my home.
Yeah.
Like, I also like alone time, so, like, I can literally leave here and still be here, but just kind of get some space. So that was quite interesting,
Yeah.
I'd have to say. But
Let me restart this real quick. My dad, I spent 8 years car free because ultimately I'm an anti-car culture person. I think that our commitment and reliance on the automobile in this country is ridiculous. And so out of, like, ethics and politics, for 8 years I was without a car, and I called my dad and I was like, you know, I'm a bit of an iconoclast too. And I called my dad and I was like, I'm thinking about buying a van. He's like, oh, I could hear it in his voice. Oh, you're turning into a real boy. You know?
oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
And I was like, and turn it into a camper. And then maybe get rid of my apartment. And he's like, so you're going to live in a car? And I'm like, well, and so Colette drove me to Fontana 2 hours away because I found this van at the used car dealership. I bought it. And my dad's like a loan officer. And so when I go into debt, he perceives that as stability, because if you have payments, then you have to do stuff to make the payments. And so I didn't tell them that I had moved into it, but all of a sudden the bank had sent me, like, the stock report, which he just sends us that stuff because they nerd out on it.
Right.
And it had bounced back from my apartment to the bank.
Oh.
And he's like, do I have the right address? And I'm like, well, I'm getting mail at Katie's house now. My sister lives in town. And he's like, oh, so I didn't tell him before I moved into the van. And then when I went home last year, I drove to South Carolina from here, and it was awkward enough that I did stay in the guest room, because I was like, they're not going to be okay with me sleeping in my house right now.
It's so
It's weird.
interesting. But it's also funny too, because you have everyone who's just like, no, come inside, like, do you need a shower, do you need laundry? And part of it's like, okay, they're being nice, and then part of it's like, no, you need a shower. Like, you should probably do your laundry. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so funny. You get both ends of the spectrum all the time.
Yeah.
We're like, we'll take a shower and we'll shit in your house, but, like, we're gonna sleep in our house.
100%. I'm like the same thing.
And it settles people down sometimes. Usually when you tell them that, you're like,
They're like, oh,
no,
fair
this is our
enough.
house,
They're like,
but it doesn't have a toilet in it, so
Go
we're coming
for
in
it.
for that.
Yes.
Wow. Let's see, what else? Where have you been?
Oh, everywhere. Not everywhere, but a lot of places. So basically, I started in Vegas because I lived there the last 7 years. Started there, went to Joshua Tree, then basically right to the coast of California. I drove all the way up the coast to Portland, and I stayed in Portland for a month. However, that was kind of because I was stuck. I was fixing a bunch of my electrical, and then new battery, alternator, all that kind of stuff. So quite honestly, for like 2 of those weeks, I was couch surfing because the mechanic wouldn't let me sleep in the van.
Sure.
So that was
That's like my biggest fear.
totally. Well, I'm like, hey, I live in this thing, so you need to know that for like some sort of like sense of urgency here, because if you're not going to let me sleep here, that's the thing too. Is I luckily had like a community in Portland of other van people that were like willing to help, and also just like friends who have houses. So I was really taken care of. However, it sucks counting on people, or not even necessarily counting people, but I'm just always feel guilty for that kind of stuff.
You don't want to feel like you're imposing.
Yeah.
No, so for like 2.5 weeks, it's like I spent so much money not only on fixing the van, but also like going out to eat for every freaking meal because I don't have my house. It was insane. But that was the entire month in Portland, and then I had to speak in Oklahoma, so I made that trek from there to Oklahoma, and then I went home for 2 weeks, which honestly was supposed to be like 4 days, but I have an 8-month-old nephew, and he's so stinking cute, so I kind of got stuck staying for a while. And then I did Ohio to Nebraska for another kind of speaking engagement, then went back to Nevada for more speaking, up to Oregon for like 3 more weeks, and then back to Nevada to speak, and then now I'm in California.
Okay.
So we're kind of been all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's been awesome, because sometimes I'm like, I wish I could plant my wheels somewhere for a little bit and kind of stay a while. But at the same time, I'm moving so much because I'm speaking, and like that's the
if you got work.
So it's totally fine by
dang,
me.
You have to go on another adventure.
Right?
Life sucks.
And like windshield time for me is everything.
Yeah.
I think before I moved into the van, and I don't know if you guys were there yesterday when I was talking about it, but before I moved into the van, I was like, I'm gonna be so alone, like know what silence is, like just be like scared all the time or whatever, all these things that everyone else projects on you, right? And honestly, windshield time is like my only alone time.
Right.
So I like really value that, and I've met amazing people, so like that loneliness has not been a thing. And even I was telling my friend yesterday, I was like, I kind of find it hard to believe that some people like in their vans do feel all this loneliness. And I'm like, there's so many strangers that you can talk to, but again, obviously we're all different. So
I feel like for us, we just did a 7.5 week trip where we went all the way out to like Montreal and New York. But for the two of us, we have each other, right? And so if we're bored, we start talking. And
we're forced to talk to each other.
And then B, we're both like you, we're both extroverts, right? But I would think that, for an individual solo person living in a van who is an introvert and is scared to talk to people that they don't know, I can't imagine that it would be isolating. What do you, when you go to a new, so the places that you just told us about are basically the Western Seaboard and then like to the Midwest. And it sounds like you probably have a decent network in a lot of those places, and to the extent that you're being invited to come speak at something, then you've got a built-in sort of social experience there too. What do you, when you're going somewhere, when you're passing through somewhere, what do you do to engage with people if you want to? Do you have apps that you go to? You just walk into the restaurant and start talking to folks?
Kind of. Honestly, I think I could talk to a wall, but I feel like I always end up having like some crazy conversation with someone at the coffee shop. I'm always like trying to go to those spots to work and stuff, and plus I typically get some sort of interaction with humans if I'm by myself, so that's been a huge thing for me. And honestly, the power of social media, sometimes it gets such a bad rep, and I do agree that some people use it inappropriately or not the way, like whatever. However, I've met so many people where I'm like, I've been friends with them for months via Instagram, and then finally like our roads cross or whatever. But yeah, honestly though, in the 5 months I have not been alone very much at all. And so it's been good. I had like 1 week, and like literally out of 5, 1 week where I was completely by myself, but I was still speaking, so I don't know, it's been interesting. But
people talk crap about millennials and social media and all of that stuff, and it's just about how you use it. And there are people that I got excited about fall because everybody in the van community comes here to our home for the winter because it's the best weather for the winter, and everybody goes out to other places to adventure and stuff during the other months. But this time of year, we're like the mecca. We're the center of the universe for van people. And I'm excited for a bunch of people who are coming down from the Pacific Northwest. You guys just got here yesterday, and we've got friends that we talk to on the internet that same sort of deal that we don't really know. I've met them once or twice or whatever, and it's so cool to be able to do that.
I think like with that too, before I moved into the van, I didn't expect to have like such solid friendships and relationships with people so quickly. And so even my month in Portland, like, I drove away crying, like, because I had made such like amazing new friends. And like I said, I literally had a community up there. I felt like some people who were van friends and some people who like live in houses there, and I did not expect that. And I think you said something earlier too about how all of us kind of have this connection. I think we all live in a van for some reason, like some win moment, like I like to say. And so we do, like, we connect really fast because we're all going against that grain. And, like, we have that in common, and we probably have some rock bottom moments in common, or just like more empathetic, I guess. And so you like dive in quickly, and it's like, oh my god, I just met you 5 minutes ago and I just told you my life story. But it's amazing.
Well, and back to I would love to hear you expound more on this idea, because it's something that I've thought about, but I don't have like bullet points to talk about it. This idea of being more childlike and acting more the way that kids do, because that's something that I've always, ever since I was like 19, I was like, oh shit, it's going away, and I want to hold on to it. I've always, ever since I became a quote unquote adult, aspired to see life as nakedly as kids do. And I think to a certain degree, the one thing, whether, you know, some of us are surfers, some of us are motivational speakers or rock climbers or mountain bikers, like these are the people, the typical, you know, the typical demographics that sort of gravitate towards living in a van. But the one thing that I think is the real through line is that we all really are willing to get out of our comfort zones. And I think that probably translates into us being prepared to be more real with each other. You know, it's like, I don't like this shit, I don't like that, here's who I am, you like it or you don't, right? And I feel like maybe that's why those connections happen super fast.
Like, and even with what you just said too, like, I always say I want all of you or I want none of you, and I want to give people all of me or none of me, in a sense. And that was something a couple years ago I was like really nervous to do when I lost my dad. And basically it was like, one thing happened: when it rains, it pours. And I was like, how am I going to ever meet someone again or like want to be around people? Like, I have so much baggage. But to me, it's like, they're all good bags to carry. They're heavy, but like, you got to carry them. And my like mentor, he was like, you got to give people all of you or none of you, and do it in the beginning, because you're going to invest all this time with someone, and then maybe they don't like something about you because you were holding on to it because you thought people wouldn't like it about you. Well, then I don't want you in my life anyway. So I think that's kind of how I started approaching life. And maybe sometimes, and I apologize when I don't need to or I shouldn't, but sometimes I'm like, okay, sorry, I just literally gave you everything, but take it or leave it. And I think that honesty and vulnerability is kind of a common ground with everyone in this community, which is cool.
And the thing is, man, your ugly is really, like you're saying, you know, a lot of time the moments when you find that, or you realize how beautiful life is, are right on the heels of a bad moment. In the same way, in the same regard, I feel like human beings' beauty is in there a lot of times in their individual trauma. You know what I mean? Like, I know people who are in NA and AA and have had like done gnarly shit, and them sharing that is never going to do any harm to me, right? It's going to bring me closer to them, and maybe even I'm going to benefit from it, from learning something about what not to get into. You know what I mean? Where not to slide and stuff. So what's next? Where are you headed?
From here, I'm going to be in California for a couple weeks, I think. Then Arizona, back to Nebraska, and then home for Christmas for a little bit. The plan was Baja after that. We'll see. We will see.
Okay.
But I feel like, too, it's so hard to commit to anything in the van. I used to be someone who was, like, such a planner. Like, I was, like, still spontaneous, but spontaneously organized, if that makes sense. And now I feel like I say yes to me. And so saying yes to other people is a challenge.
Yeah.
And yes to other things that like have to. I just can't tell people I'm going to be here on this day.
You just don't want to be weighed down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless it's something that you want to do personally. Yeah. That's a great luxury to have. Long term, where are you headed? Where do you want to go?
So I think kind of in 2020, I want to try and plant my wheels in places for a little bit longer. So the vision for me, ideally, and I don't know at what point this will happen, but as far as speaking, because again, that's like end all be all, right? So I would love, for example, to like be in Denver for a solid month. And in that month, I get to speak to all those different demographics. So I can go speak to student leadership. I can speak to a women's event in a college within athletics, do a dance workshop, whatever, while also getting to kind of know that city a little bit, its surroundings, and then also go off and adventure, camp, whatever. So that's kind of, for me, hopefully, where right now I'm definitely chasing the speaking, where I would love it for one day to be like, hey, I'm going to be here at this time, like, take it or leave it, eventually. I'll never say no to anything, I don't think, because I just love it so much. Like, I had a friend of mine who's like, just charge more and then you can do it less. And I was like, I would love to charge less and do it every day.
Right.
For me, like, it's not about the money. Like, all I need to do is, like, pay the van, get gas, food. Like, that's all I care about. It'd be nice to pay off some debt, right? Yeah. But for me, like, I literally would do it every single day if I could. I'd be exhausted because pouring into people, I realize, like, how tired I get. Even last night, someone was like, you look tired. I'm like, I am. I just gave so much of my heart to people. It's just, but I love that. So yeah, that's kind of like long-term goal. I thought I'd only do the van for a year, and now only after 5 months, I'm like, I'm here for a while. Yeah.
I got the van, and I only moved out of my apartment because I was like, well, I finished the van. I might as well complete the experiment. And I fully expected to be 2 months later, be like, it's nice to have a camper van, but I'm moving back into an apartment. And we want a bigger van because it's the three of us in here. And it's like, when one person moves, you feel it, you know, no matter where you're at. But I don't see, I'm sure it'll happen someday, me get another like brick and mortar house, but I don't know when it's gonna happen.
Right. Well, I even found now, like, not just van life, but just tiny living in general. I went to a tiny house festival, and I was kind of like, dang, like, maybe I never want to live in like
a traditional home.
Where do the tiny home thing.
So right out here, there are these two new mansions that were built that both have a view of the ocean, probably $6-7 million houses. And every time I walk past them, because we park here most days, and then I go walk downtown to get a beer, or hang out with people, or take him for a run. Every time I walk past one of those places, I'm like, dude, if I lived in there, I would have to have 20 of my friends hanging out with me all the time.
Yeah, we're like, what would we do? Like, how do we fill those rooms?
Yeah.
When you have space, you just fill it with shit.
Yeah. Right. And it's typically like couples, or like a family with like an only child or something. And I'm like, what?
Like, really?
That was something that, like, my grandma, she didn't really understand this concept either. And I was like, I want to live in a van because I want the entire world to be my backyard. Where obviously we always get the joke, like, are you the van that lives down by the river? And I'm like, sometimes. Other times, though, I'm the van that's in the mountains or by the ocean or in a parking lot. But, like, we get that choice, and we don't even have to do the landscaping. And for me, like, that's the best part. Don't even have to cut the grass.
Yeah. Jared this morning was wearing this hilarious Matt Foley t-shirt.
Yeah, I know the one.
Super awkward conversation, because I go, oh, I love that shirt, man. Whose shirt is that? He goes, it's mine. And I'm like, I'm not accusing you of stealing somebody's shirt, dude. Where'd you get it?
Right.
Yeah, being able to go around. That's our joke is, we're at our local dog park today, and it's always like a different place, 300, 400 miles from here and stuff.
Right.
What are there any like little, apart from the things that are very obvious, and this might be sort of akin to the van life hack question, but are there things that, especially since you're only 5 months in, are there things that you've
didn't know were gonna be super badass about living in the van, that like you were just like, oh, this makes X a whole lot easier?
So I'm like, I think sometimes we focus too much on like the unique challenges. Where sometimes I guess I don't necessarily sit back. Besides just, I think the van gives me the opportunity to finally have my life and live it completely on my terms. And obviously that's kind of like a broad thing, of course. But that at this point is like what I've completely taken from it. I also love though that I know a lot of people don't like driving at night. However, I'm kind of like, if I have a long drive, like I'm just gonna drive until I can't. I don't have like a whole like 3-hour rule or something. So I think that's the best thing about being in a van though. Like as soon as I get tired, like I can pull over and go to bed, and that's what's amazing. Because there's been times that I'm like, okay, I literally have driven till 2 a.m. because I can, and then you find somewhere to sleep and you get up early and you head out. Because I think too, I try to take advantage of like where I'm at as long as possible. So I'm like the crazy that will literally do like a 10-hour day just because I would rather like soak up everything in this place and soak up everything in the next place than being like, okay, I'm only gonna drive 3 hours, and now 3 hours later I'm in this like super middle of nowhere, like literally nothing to do, nothing to see place. And yes, you can see beauty in everything or do cool stuff.
Not West Texas.
See, you were right. And I was just in like middle of nowhere, Nevada, and same thing. Like, we wouldn't have a gas station for 5 hours at times. So I'm like, that rule doesn't work for me.
We like that too.
I was alone. Colette had work, and so she couldn't come across the country for Christmas last year. She flew out to see us once I got there. But I drove the wide version of the Texas drive in one day, because I was like, I got up in New Mexico and I was like, I'm gonna drive to Denver and have dinner in Denver, and I wasn't really feeling it. Dallas. I was like, I'm gonna drive to Dallas and have dinner in Dallas, and I had a burger and I kind of wasn't really feeling it, and I was like, I'm just gonna get in the van and drive. Like, I haven't had any beer, and I bought a 6-pack in Texas, didn't open it, put it in the fridge, and drove all the way to Shreveport, Louisiana, because I was just like, I was awake, so just keep going, you know?
Totally. Okay, though, grocery shopping. It's amazing to go grocery shopping and then just put your crap away instantly.
Oh, yes.
I love that. Same thing with laundry. However, like, laundry is my least favorite errand or chore. So the fact that I don't do it very often is honestly amazing. And then to just be able to take your stuff, put it away right away is kind of nice.
Well, and the other thing is, like, this is another thing, is like, I will take people up. I don't sleep in people's houses, but I will take people up on a shower sometimes and doing laundry at their place.
Laundry 100%.
But once you get used to doing laundry at a laundromat, and then you go to somebody's house, if you don't want to hang out at their house for a while, you realize how much slower the like residential machines are, because you can do 3 or 4 loads all at one time, and then the dryer takes 15 minutes in those. It's probably thrashing your clothes, but like it's quick. You know?
Totally.
What else, bud?
Sorry, this guy's being an asshole today. You just went to the beach for 2 hours and you're not listening to other people.
I think he wants to get us. I think he wants us to get out of his house so that he can take a nap.
He's like, "What are you doing in here for so long?"
It's Spin's van. We've only done 40 of these podcasts, dude. You're not used to it yet.
So cheeky.
Where can people find you?
On Instagram, I'm Movin Alexa, so no G, just MOVIN Alexa. My website, which I'm like blogging and doing some stuff on there, is alexaglazer.com. My movement is Livin the Dream, the movement on Instagram. Again, no G, so a little bit everywhere.
Where can you get your book? Do you have it on?
I have it on my website, alexaglazer.com, or it's on Amazon.
Nice.
Or Barnes & Noble online, Target online.
Okay.
Lots of good stuff. Yeah.
What's the plan for the next book? Do you have an idea yet?
Honestly, no.
Did you know you want to do it?
Yeah, and I feel like the van has given me a lot of like deep-rooted thoughts, and so I have like small ideas, I guess, of how I maybe want to set it up, but right now I'm just gonna write and then figure it out afterwards. Like things that I like, don't like, because that's kind of how it worked out last time. I had a better guideline of what I wanted out of it. But all in all, like, nothing about that book was written in order. It was just as it came.
Yeah. So and you just put it together afterwards.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, what did we miss?
No, that was awesome.
Anything burning, like, that you want to tell us that you didn't?
Ooh, I can talk about my brown bag diaries.
What is this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so when I first started my whole, like, Livin the Dream journey, I would say, it was, like, one of my first speaking engagements, and this woman was like, well, of course you're living the dream, you're young, blonde, and living on the beach. And I'm like, okay, I guess, like, in terms of society, I'm young. At that time, was 24, 25. And I was like, however, I'm definitely not a blonde if you look closely. Like, these roots are brown. And I've never lived on the beach in my life. So that was someone who's just, like, looking at a square on Instagram or a video on YouTube, right? And, like, judging all your, like, superficial, materialistic, just pictures. And my response to this woman was, I don't care if you see me. I don't care if you know my name, what I look like. Put a brown bag over my head and, like, just listen to my message. And 2 years or so later, I started this thing called Brown Bag Diaries. It's still, like, very early stages, but I think it's, like, baby number 3 eventually. But yeah, I started putting a brown bag over my head, taking pictures, crushing these stereotypes that people placed on me, and eventually kind of want to tell other people's stories of, like, the stereotypes that they have on them. Because another thing was, a friend of mine was like, don't talk about living in your van, like, talk about losing your dad. That's a better story. And I'm like, I'm not the girl that lives in her van. I'm not the girl who lost her dad. Like, I'm just me. Right. And it's funny, even Jared, I called him out the other day, which is typically what I do. But he was like, so what are you, the next Tony Robbins or Gary Vee? And I was like, no, like, I'm just me. And so I think when people can do that and feel more comfortable in, like, who they actually are and kind of look inward, it's amazing. And so I've taken pictures, my brown bag, like, in my van, kind of debunking what, like, other people think van life is. I haven't posted this one yet, but my dad's birthday is coming up, and something I do on his birthday is I hit imaginary dingers. I always go to a baseball field, bring Kettle One, pour some on home plate, and, like, hit a dinger, run the bases, and just, like, hang there. But I've had people be like, how are you still sad about this? Like, it's been 6 birthdays. And I'm like, I lost my dad. Like,
dude.
What? I just people. It's amazing. The things you wouldn't think people say. Like, it's amazing. So I've done all that stuff, and then I've taken a couple pictures of friends in debunking their stereotypes. The process is really cool because I'm like, okay, how do you feel when you put this brown bag over your head? And at first you feel really silly. It's literally like a Safeway bag, right? And you feel uncomfortable, especially like if we're in public. But then everyone kind of has that same reaction where it's like, I then felt really safe. I wasn't worrying about if I looked good in the picture, if I had enough makeup on, if I had something in my tooth, if my hair looked okay. I had a friend of mine, she's like, I haven't showered in a week. She lives in a van too, and she's like, this is kind of great. Like, put this brown bag over my head. But she was like, you feel finally like you can be you and really comfortable, and that to me is the goal with this whole thing. So I don't know what it's going to look like in the end, but I know that I love it right now, and just kind of making people feel better, just being actually who they are. But also I think telling people, like, who they're not, and, like, knowing that that's okay to do that. I think sometimes we're scared when people say that we're something, we're like, I actually don't fit in that bubble at all. But we fear this judgment that if we're not that, or what they're gonna think if we say that we're not, or whatever. And I just want to give people a space to feel like they can be them.
Yeah, it's weird. And especially for I feel like so many people who are trying to create something feel obligated to package whatever they're doing in a way that's going to be readily accepted. And it's, if you're selling stuff, sometimes I guess you have to do that. I don't know. It's interesting to try to find the happy medium there. Maybe we should get brown bags. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast.
No, thank you guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It's been a good time chatting. And I'm stoked for what you're doing. I'm hoping that you're that you get the notoriety to where you can just like post up in places and speak. What's the breadth? Here's another question. How wide a breadth of people have you spoken to? Have you done a prison yet?
No. But so one of my big goals was I wanted to speak to all men.
Yeah.
Because I just think, I was like, how can I get, because that'd be such a challenge. Like, how do you get a group of men to listen to this, like, little blonde girl and, like, take me seriously? Like, what can I do to make them feel like I'm relatable to them? Because I think that's the biggest thing as far as speaking. Like, you gotta relate with people or they're not gonna feel anything. I think a lot of speakers, they'll tell you, like, quote on top of quote with, like, a statistic here and, like, barely any personal experience. And people get hyped in the moment, but it's like, I don't want people hyped in the moment. Like, I want to give you some chills, give you those light bulb moments, and then think about what I said a week from now, a month from now, or, like, years, where it's like, wait, what did that girl say? And not be able to necessarily, like, look it up online. Like, because you're like, oh, that quote, what was that one quote? Who said that? And it's, like, never the speaker that actually said it. And so, to me, it's just, like, being relatable, and it's, like, telling stories that relate to that specific demographic. Like, when I'm with high schoolers, I'm talking about, like, getting bullied about my thunder thighs when I was in high school, right? When I'm with women, I'm talking about the amount of times that I thought that I wasn't good enough and hate looking at myself in the mirror. And so when I had a group of men, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do here? But for me, there's an opportunity to talk about, like, I know, like, what good men are and how they should act because I had great men in my life and that impact that they kind of made on me. So I've done all men, and that was like a fraternity in college.
Yeah. How'd it go?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of a lash from some of them, but that's okay. I like that, and like I always welcome like people challenging me because I think that's when you get better at like your craft.
Sure.
And then I mean I've spoke literally to every age as far as school, like literally kindergartners to.
No, this is a shit show. We're alive.
Yeah, we're good. All right.
Bags are gonna fly away.
Like
Save the planet.
all groups of students, women kind of all ages, but yeah, never a prison. Yesterday was cool when I spoke here because it was kind of the first time I spoke to a group that didn't necessarily have like a common cause, if that makes sense. And where I'm always like, okay, like what am I gonna do to relate to these people? And that's why too, like I loved yesterday because it was like an hour of kind of just like mingling, and I like to do that to like feel out the room. Over leg. And kind of like feel what people need. But that was kind of cool yesterday because you had no idea what people's common ground was.
Yeah.
I'm someone who's like, there's 7.53 billion people in the world and we all have something in common. No one wants to think that, but again, it's like storytelling and not being afraid of strangers. But it's like, hey, maybe we just have like our favorite color is red, but it's still something that like you can start a conversation on. So yesterday it was like you just didn't know what that one thing was,
Right.
and that was what was cool though.
Yeah.
So
You spoke at Vori, which is a local company that people should think, if they don't know what it is, think Lululemon, but maybe a little bit higher quality and more close to the original creators. How'd you get
Cheaper.
that gig?
yeah, so the manager there, his name's Seth. He's in like the van community. He's building out his van right now.
Oh, good.
And
I need you to introduce me to him.
yeah, he's amazing.
I met him last night,
Yeah,
but, like-
yeah. He's so amazing. But we started talking on social media like months ago. I don't even know how or why, but that's kind of how it works, right? And he just saw that I was doing a bunch of speaking, or saw that I wrote a book and stuff, and he was like, hey, we do like community stuff here, like I'd love to bring you on and have you talk and do a book signing or kind of whatever. And it's really cool because I've never necessarily done anything like that either, so it was just kind of a learning process for all of us. And I was like, I'm like the chillest person ever, as far as all that. I'm like, I don't, give me a chair, make me stand, other people, I don't know, people can sit on the, like, whatever it is, like, it'll work. And I left last night feeling like, oh, like it worked, you
Great.
know? And
Yeah.
you kind of walk in like, okay, how many people are going to show up? Like, am I going to be talking to my friends who already have to hear me talk about my stuff like
This
all the
stuff
time
all the time,
anyway?
yeah.
Because I'm like, I feel like I have like all these like mini masterminds with friends, you know? 'Cause in this realm too, I feel like everyone's trying to be creative and do something, and it's so important to have those people who are going to be like, yeah, that's good, that's not so good, and like expand on that idea. So yeah, yesterday was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I want to do more stuff like that for sure.
Cool.
And I'll set you up with Seth. He's cool.
Right.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah, good. That's cool. Does he live in town here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, we will be friends. I always tell people that, like, if you're a stoner, you hang out with stoners.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a yogi, you hang out with yogis and surfers. And every other sort of group, and there's like this whole community that nobody knows about until they start doing the van thing.
100%.
And then they just like explode right in front of you. You're like, oh, hey, you.
Yes. And I always say to them, like, my van friend. And like other people who aren't in the community, they're like, what is your van friend? I'm like, they live in a van. Like, they get it.
Yeah.
But that's what's so cool too, especially being by myself in the van. Like, there's something about making friends of other people in their van and like getting to hang out with them, and like my van sleeps next to their van. Like, then I know I'm okay.
Yeah.
If like you don't need to sleep with me, but just like be next to me in your van in your parking spot.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Yeah. We haven't done any caravanning yet. I'm looking forward to when we get to do some of that. Good. We did it. It's a podcast.
Sweet.
And you were a jerk, but you're still cute.
A jerk.
All right, guys, we did it. That was episode 37 of From the Van featuring Alexa Glazer. We had a really good conversation. It was good to sit down and hang out with her, and I really appreciate you if you've stuck around and listened this long. Tune in next week on Tuesday for another episode of From the Van.